Hi, I'm Caitlin, and this is Book Chats, and today I'm reviewing the fifth debut that I've read in 2017, and that is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. So this book is one that I was actually not going to read. I saw the cover and loved it, but I read the description and was like, I don't know if I really care. And then everyone was reading it and talking about it, and I was like, okay, now I feel like I really have to read it, and it's getting all this buzz, and it sounds very interesting. And so I picked it up, and I'm really glad that I did. I don't know if I would have picked it up without the buzz, but I did enjoy the book overall, and although it was definitely not my favorite book that I've read this year, it was one that I don't regret reading. I enjoyed a lot about this book. I thought that the romance overall was quite enjoyable, that the tech aspect of the book was surprisingly well thought out and was much better than many other YA and middle grade type novels that I have read. It had relatively well-drawn characters, and the conflict between them was very reasonable and didn't feel like it was fake or just like hyped up for the sake of creating conflict. I also felt that there was a side sort of romance that was maybe being hinted at that was very compelling, and I heard that maybe it's going to be in like a sequel or companion book, and I am here for that. I am here for that. I had two major problems with this book, and one of them is more general or like more like more people might have, and one of them is just specific to me and kind of stupid and not really not fair of me. The first problem I had that was more general is that I felt like the romance progressed very, very, very quickly, like uncomfortably quickly. Like I was uncomfortable with how fast, the romance progressed during the time period that was supposedly being covered. It's interesting because there are probably other books that I have read in which the romance has progressed at a similar pace. I'm thinking probably I'll Meet You There by Heather Demetrios, which I really enjoyed, probably also had a romance that progressed to a similar point over the course of a summer, but for whatever reason, the way that the author developed it in that book, it like logically worked for me, and in this book, it didn't quite work for me, and I don't know if that's just because I wasn't in the right headspace or if it's because of what the characters were or weren't dealing with. Anyway, it's a problem that I think some people might have and others might not. But ultimately, I enjoyed the romance overall. I just wasn't necessarily sure if I liked the pace of it. The other big issue I had with the book is really, really unfair of me, guys. It's really unfair. And it's that I was really disappointed by how much the like tech programming competition aspect of the book took a backseat to the romance. Which is like, of course it did. This is a YA contemporary romance. I knew that going in. But I picked it up and I started reading, and there was this really solid tech aspect. Like, Dimple is a woman who wants to go into tech, who's very aware of the challenges of women in tech, who has this genuinely excellent idea for an app. Like, so many times when I read books where there's like an app creator, or there's an app involved, or there's tech of some kind involved, the decision is just not one that would actually work, or it's like really stupid, or it's just like, this is so fake. But the app that Dimple has an idea for is such a good idea. It's so good. It's so good. It's like combining my public health degree with my current tech job, and I just loved it so much. And she cares, and she obviously knows about tech and what it's like to be a woman in tech, and she is driven, and I got so attached to that part of the story, and then it just disappears. It like just disappears for most of the book. And that is because the romance like kind of comes center stage. And obviously there are aspects of the romantic development that involve Dimple and Rishi. There are aspects of the romance developing between Dimple and Rishi that involve their being partners in this camp where they're working on coding this thing. But they just like the author just chooses to kind of go up to like a 10,000 foot level and kind of gloss over a lot of the aspects of what it actually means to program and develop this app. And I'm not sure if that's because they weren't actually programming and they were like just working out a business plan, or they were actually programming, or they were doing like prototyping and wireframing. Like even that was unclear to me, like how much they were actually developing during camp and how much they would have to do afterwards to take it to market. But I was just disappointed because I work in a tech company and we work with app developers a lot, and it just was exciting to feel like I saw myself represented and then have that representation disappear for most of the book. Yeah. Again, this is not a reasonable complaint. This is just me thinking that maybe the book would have something that it was never purported to have, and then none of the advertising suggested it would. So yeah, diversity within this book. Both of the main characters are Indian American, and I liked especially that they both have different relationships with their parents and different relationships with their heritages and different views on kind of life. And it was nice to see that, like, oh yes, like, they both come from a similar cultural background, but they are not the same person. They don't see things the same way, and their cultural background affects how they view things differently. And I'm excited that we will, in the companion novel, get to see an even different perspective of someone who has a similar cultural background. So that's super exciting. Also, Dimple's roommate and friend at the conference is, I believe, Latina or Hispanic. And I am totally going to count women in tech as an option here, because I think women in tech is something that is always exciting to see for me personally. And although women make up like 50% of the world population, so it's not totally diversity, women in tech are much more sparse, and so it is really great to see them on the page. I also want to mention, because part of the kind of kerfuffle around this book that was in conjunction with some of the hype it was receiving is about the fact that Dimple punches people a lot, and particularly she punches Rishi a lot during the course of the book, and some people were concerned that maybe that meant their relationship was abusive. So here's where I came down on that. It was a little excessive, and I think I might even have noticed it if it wasn't brought to my attention, but I don't think I would have perceived it as being abusive. I am super not an authority on this topic, by the way. I think that you should maybe read some other people's kind of thoughts on it, and I will try to link down below to some threads around it. But what I think, and my perception of it, and what I think I would have assumed is, even if I hadn't had it brought to my attention, is that it's a little bit of a characterization mistake that Menon made in writing, in that I think she is trying to suggest that Dimple is one of these people who sort of playfully, like, makes a fist and sort of, like, punches people, but it's not a real punch, like, it's sort of a tap that is made with a fist, and that Dimple does that as part of, like, her interaction with people generally. I think that's sort of the point, and I think sometimes, like, Rishi does mention that it was a little harder than he expected, but I don't think that means that it was like a flat down knockout, I'm angry and doing this because I'm angry kind of situation. I think that sometimes we don't know our own strength, and that is how I perceived it. I think I perceived it as a characterization error, because on the page it doesn't specify that it is that kind of sort of tap with a fist. It does actually say she punched him. It does say sometimes that it was harder than he expected. And I, again, don't think there are other red flags or markers of a potential abusive relationship on the page in relation to that. So I don't really hold that against the book. Personally, I think that it's a debut novel, it's a first-time author, and characterization is hard, and sometimes in our head we know exactly what we're talking about, and it just does not come up on the page the way we think it does. But that's just me, and that's my opinion on that situation. I think that it is worth, if you are not someone who gets triggered by this kind of potential abuse situation, that it is worth reading and thinking about, and it is worth reading what people's thoughts on it are, and it is definitely worth reading up on the red flags and warning signs for abusive relationships, because it is always worth challenging kind of the ways that relationships are sold to us in the media, and what is sold as normal or not, and what really is normal or not, and what we really should expect. So I'm going to put links to things down below, but I thought this was fine personally, and I'm really excited to read the next book about the side characters' romance because I am very invested in that. So that's my thoughts on When Dimple Met Rishi. This book is one that many, many people have read, so let me know down below if you've read it and if you agree or disagree with my thoughts on it, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!